So hey y'all, we knew Hack UTD is coming up this weekend, and we know most of y'all, if y'all are going, are excited. So we want to kind of pass on a bunch of tips that we've picked up throughout the years, or I guess 2 years we've been attending hackathons. So thanks for coming, and we hope you'll definitely hear something new which you can use. I know some people like never attend hackathons during college because it might not seem like something they'd like, or they're too nervous to, or like they don't want to try it alone. But hopefully this workshop will convince you guys otherwise. So we can go ahead and get started. So hey y'all, I'm Reshmi. I'm the Director of Education. I'm a senior in software engineering, but I'm staying at UTD for another year after to get my master's because I'm part of the fast track. I'm not really sure what I want to do with my degree yet after graduation, but currently I'm interested in artificial intelligence and full stack development. And I love attending hackathons for the learning aspect. Whenever I say I want to learn something through like a normal school day or school week, I always like have other assignments and stuff that like piles up. So I really like having dedicated time over the weekend to like actually take the time and like learn something new.
Hi, I'm Saloni. I'm an officer at ACM Education. I'm also a senior in software engineering, and I'll be staying at UTD for my fast track and CS. My interests lie in cybersecurity and full stack web development, and that is something I want to do in the future, and hopefully intersection of two like a security engineering job. I like going to hackathons because I like having the satisfaction of like a fully functioning project in 24 hours. It gives you a adrenaline rush to complete something in a really short amount of time.
Hi everyone, I'm May. I'm senior in CS, also doing fast track here. My interests like Saloni are cybersecurity, full stack web development, and I love hackathons because I really love learning and trying new technologies that we never really get to see in class or anything. So, yeah. So today we're going to be busting some hackathon myths and giving you guys some tips that we picked out. We're going to go over what to expect when you join a hackathon, what mindset you should go in with, how to form teams and how to get through that, planning your project, the actual coding, of course, and then finally, how to sell your project to the judges.
So why are we qualified to give you this talk? Together we've been to around 24 hackathons and we've won prizes in about 11 of them. And we've also been in the top 3 or top 5 finalists in a lot more of them. And how we got started was I got interested in hackathons the summer after high school. I entered into one, I got qualified into like going to one, but I couldn't go. But then I went to Hack MIT. That was my first hackathon, and I went there without knowing anyone. I made a team there, and that was really early into freshman year, and I didn't know how to code. And we ended up just creating a prototype and a slideshow pitch. Um, but then I like started learning how to code. I started learning web dev, mobile dev. Me and Reshmi went to A&M uh, to a hackathon at Texas A&M. That was when we created a legit project for the first time. And then me, Reshmi, and May went to a Hack DFW where we won our first prize. And since then, we've just been learning new things and going to hackathons and just learning about new technologies.
So some people might not be super familiar with what a hackathon even is, and that's completely fine. I mean, you would be coming here just to learn more about them. But it's basically a 24 to 48-hour event where programmers get together to work on a project. Most hackathons try and be as inclusive as possible, welcoming programmers of any experience level. So don't worry if you think you don't know enough, you can definitely spend some time learning, and there's definitely other people who are also like beginners. And after Hack UT this weekend, if you're looking for some other hackathons to attend, DevPost is a great site which lists them every weekend, and you'll actually be using DevPost to submit your project. So you'll be able to check that out. And you can also subscribe to MLH's mailing list. MLH stands for Major League Hacking, and they sponsor a bunch of hackathons, and they're also sponsoring Hack UTD, and they have a mailing list which they send out, I think maybe every week, and they list hackathons as well as workshops that they have. So that's definitely cool to check out. But because a hackathon is so short, a fully working product isn't expected. Some people might only submit wireframes or prototype at their first hackathon, and that's completely fine, as it's definitely a learning process on how to manage time. One hackathon that I attended, I was trying to learn how to set up GraphQL, and like halfway in, I got like really annoyed because the permissions wasn't working. So I ended up just like scrapping the whole project, and I worked on like a different one with a tech stack I was already familiar with, so it took a shorter amount of time. So like go in knowing that unexpected things may happen, just kind of like go with the flow. So some common reasons that people go to hackathons are, I will talk about those. So as I mentioned before, my favorite reason for attending hackathons is the chance to learn something new. You can quickly learn by actually doing with the dedicated time you have, rather than spending months saying you'll do tutorials and only do a little each week. If there's a new technology you're interested in, this could be your chance to finally explore it. And some people might believe that you can only win a hackathon if you know the language beforehand, but this isn't true. One of the hackathons that I was in, the team decided to use Vue because the one person knew Vue, and he believed that it would be easier to learn than React, which I think 2 other people knew. So we decided to go with Vue, and this was the first time the other 5 of us were ever using Vue, and we still ended up winning that one. So definitely don't think that you can't learn and also win a hackathon. And the next part is sharpening time management skills. So one of the hardest parts of a hackathon is only coding in a short amount of time. You should try and section out your time with all the stages that we will cover today. And we've definitely still have some last minute rushes, even though we've been to a bunch of them. So don't worry if you can't get everything you planned done. The next part is you can talk to companies. So in-person hackathons and even some virtual ones have sponsor fairs. When in person, before coding starts, you're able to kind of like walk around and interact with the different sponsors of that hackathon. And virtual hackathons also try and recreate this in different ways. This is a great way to kind of ask about internships, ask like what it's like working in an industry, as well as get swag, which is the next reason for attending hackathons. I know my quarantine closet is basically hackathon shirts, so you can definitely get a lot of cool things. And the next part is showcasing your skills. So if you have some like extra blank space on your resume, hackathons definitely let attendees like showcase their ability to create like compelling real world solutions by utilizing some of like the latest devices and technology. So it's basically like a way to demonstrate specific skills that you aren't able to showcase elsewhere. And even if you don't want a hackathon, you can still put your project on your resume. And lastly, while some people go to like learn and like try and just do their best, some people kind of have to like itch their competitive side and go and twin. And like no shame in wanting to do so. I totally get it. But if this is you, you should definitely like go in with a strategy and a time management plan. Okay. So on the day of or the weekend of, there are a bunch of different elements. So the first is challenges. So hackathons have both sponsor and overall challenges. Sponsor challenges come from the companies who sponsor the hackathon, and they typically reflect the company's values or ask you to use some of their products or APIs. If the hackathon is sponsored by MLH, there'll also be a set of like set MLH challenges, such as best domain name, or best use of GCP. And I know MLH is sponsoring Hacking TV, so those are included this weekend. And there's also overall challenges, which are dependent on the hackathon organizers. They might just say like first, second, and third place for like best overall, or they might have some more specific ones. It's dependent on the organizers. But every challenge typically has its own prize. And one of our tips, if you really want to win, is try and pick a not as popular sponsor challenge to do. This means like you might have less competition, but in general, you should definitely aim for a sponsor prize, not just like trying to go for the vague first, second, or third place, as you can't really tell what the overall judges are looking for, but at least you know like what a sponsor judge is looking for. The next part are the events. So hackathons have different events during the time for coding. Some hackathons do workshops in advance and some do them during. I know HackUTD actually did both. So sometimes the workshops cover sponsor APIs or technologies that would be helpful for your own project. It's a great way to like take a break from coding your own project and like hear about something else. And if you want a break from learning or coding, hackathons also have social events. And these are great ways to meet other hackers and like do something fun. While some people might try and code the whole time, we definitely recommend like taking some time off as like a break to like do something else, because coding 24/7 may even like hurt your productivity when you get burnt out. The next part is mentors. So if you get stuck on an issue, hackathons have mentors to help you out. And if it's related to like a certain sponsor's API, you should be able to talk directly to someone from that company. But one note is typically sponsors don't stay up the whole time. Some companies may have shifts, so they have 24-hour coverage, but don't expect them to be up the whole time. But if you kind of just have general questions, you should definitely be able to like ask mentors regardless of what time it is, because those usually there's usually someone always up just from the regular mentors. Not gonna lie, once over the summer, I wanted to figure out something for my intern project, and I was in a hackathon and I like went to go ask them for help for my intern project. So they're definitely very helpful. And the last part, as I mentioned on the last slide as well, in person there's a lot of free stuff, and as well as virtually there's definitely some free stuff as well. But it's amazing when in person to be able to fully focus on coding, as they like provide all the meals and like snacks you could need. And there's swag from usually both sponsors and the hackathon itself. I know HackUTD said they have swag from the hackathon itself, and they're sending it to everyone who submits a project and lives in the US. So definitely be sure to submit something. Okay, so next I will talk about the mindset, and there are two kind of main points that we want to bring up. So don't psych yourself out. I know when I first started attending hackathons, I thought everyone who won was like super smart, and like winning projects had to use buzzwords like AI or NLP, which I knew nothing about. I still don't know a lot about those, but as time went on, I realized how that isn't true. It's more about the idea and the impact your project has. Some people are too nervous to go to hackathons because they think everyone who's already been to them have been to like a lot and are like expert programmers. But if you look at the team building or introduction channels, you'll see many people saying how this might be their first hackathon or they're not super experienced. But we hope at the end of this workshop, you'll kind of get over any fears and kind of take the first step and sign up for hackathons. There's so many different themes, such as like beginner focused, women only, and like environmental focused. So you can definitely find a hackathon that has a theme that you'd be comfortable doing. And some hackathons even have beginner friendly tracks. So you might just be competing against people who are also beginners. And the next part that I'll talk about is being comfortable. Coding a whole application in 24 hours is very stressful. While you should push yourself, you should definitely know your limits and like not completely exhaust or overwork yourself. Some people believe that a hackathon means you stay up the whole night, and this is definitely not true, at least for me. I personally can't work properly if I don't get some sleep, so I try to get at least like 3 to 7 hours of sleep, depending on how much there is left to code. But also do try and get a decent amount of sleep the night before, just in preparation for getting less sleep over the weekend. And also be sure to like wear comfortable clothes and like be in a nice environment. Especially now that hackathons are virtual, you can like wear and be wherever you want. It's definitely one of the perks over in-person hackathons where you don't get to be in a comfortable place and like you might not be able to wear pajamas. So like enjoy it while it lasts. I know in person I had to sleep on like a cold hard bench once. So it wasn't super fun. But also keep yourself hydrated and eating. When we went in person, we kind of ate our weight in in snacks. And I definitely took a lot back home with me, 12 out of 10. But I know when I get really focused on something, I'll forget to eat. So make sure to know yourself and make sure you plan accordingly. And as I said before, take breaks. Even if you don't want to go to the events that the hackathon is having, take a break on your own to like go for a walk or like just lay down and like take a break from coding. And to make the most out of your experience, you should try and like decide your motivation for attending the hackathon beforehand. So I kind of mentioned some of them on the previous slides, but like, do you want to win? Do you want to have fun, or do you want to learn? Are there any events or workshops that you're super excited about and like want to make sure to attend? Or are there any companies that you really want to intern at? So try like talking to them. But by deciding ahead of time, you can like decide how to like best proceed and like budget your time for the hackathon. Okay, so the next part is teams. In the definition of hackathons, it says programmers who come together to code. So teams are kind of a big part of hackathons, as it's more of an enriching experience if you work with others. But if you want to work alone, you definitely can as well. For one of the hackathons that I went to, I started out with some teammates and they all just like ended up bailing. So I ended up having to work alone. And I was still able to like learn and like produce something, but it definitely wasn't as fun as collaborating with others. And some people believe that only teams that know each other beforehand can win, but this is definitely not true. While the majority of hackathons I have been to is with these two, I've been to at least like 5 hackathons without them, and I've still won with teams either like assigned to me and teams I've had to form. So definitely don't go to hackathon just because you don't have a team going in. And if you already have a team in mind because you like convince your friends to apply or you realize like some of your friends already had, that's definitely great. You ideally know their skill sets and personalities and like can come up with a plan on how you best work with each other. And this is also a really great way to bond with your friends. Like typically not many people spend 24 hours with the same group of people, so you can definitely get like way closer than you are already. But if you don't know of the people that you might be working with, or you don't have anyone to work with, every hackathon has you covered. There's either in-person building events, team building events, or virtual channels or events where you can find other hackers that you would want to work with. You might be able to form a team before the event by posting in one of these channels. But be sure to like mention your skills and like talk a little about your personality if you want. You can also like see what responses or DMs you get, or just like look through other people's intros and like reach out to them to form a team. But when forming a team, see if you can like find people who know like similar tech stacks or ones that like pair nicely with what you already know, because it might make it easier. But it's definitely not a requirement, as you can both learn something new. I know Hack UTD, if you go to their team building channel, they have some slides in which you can like fill out a bit of information about yourself and like try to find other people to work with. So if you currently don't have a team, that's something you can definitely go and do. But regardless of what you choose, see if you can like get everyone to like share their reason for attending, and ideally all of yours is match. Because like if one person just wants to have fun and like one person wants to seriously win, that might cause some issues because like their work ethics might be different. So see if you can like figure that out beforehand. And last part, so is communication. And communication is super key in virtual hackathons. Like when you're in person, it's much easier because like you're physically all together, but virtual ones can cause some issues. So once you have like your team, choose a common platform that everyone can access, and ideally have one with like voice and video chat, as it's like much easier to get your point across and feel like more connected with your team. Also decide if y'all want to like stay on call while coding or just like plan check-ins with each other. We typically stay on call the whole time, but some people may not want to, and that's completely fine. But make sure that like if someone has an issue, they know that they should be able to like bring it up with the team whenever they have it, just so you might like save time rather than like them spending a lot of time trying to figure it out. And if you're in different time zones, make sure you know what the deadlines are in your time zone, and recognize that there's a time difference. I know at one of the past hackathons that I was in, one of my teammates called me an hour earlier than we were supposed to meet to wake me up because she forgot that we were in different time zones.
So the first part of creating your project is actually brainstorming the idea. And one part of like your idea of of where your idea can come from is the challenge statements. Um, as Reshmi said, challenge statements are challenges set by the sponsors, or they might just be the general theme of the hackathon. And these are usually based on like a specific technology they want you to use, or an API, or just a objective or a theme. And usually when you're thinking about ideas for these challenge statements, it's really advisable to go talk to the sponsors and the mentors to ask what their feedback is and what they think of your ideas. Because there have been quite a few times where we have looked at the challenge statements, come up with some ideas that, and we thought that it was a good idea, but when we go and talk to the mentors, we actually find out that that's not what they expected of us. So to make sure that you are on the same page, it's always good to have someone's opinion on your idea. HackUTD said that their challenges should be out before the hackathon, so you can actually plan your ideas in advance. The next part is actually sitting down and coming up with ideas and choosing an ideas. What we usually do is we create a list of ideas, and they are not like a big plans. They're just like vague one-line pitches, and we just like list all the ideas that come to our mind. And sometimes we even have this like 1.5 page long Google Doc full of ideas which we choose from. And then when you have like a few ideas down, you should reflect on your goals and like how much time you have, and like other factors that you are willing to put into the hackathon. So for example, you can think about if you are looking, if your objective for the hackathon is to win a prize, to learn something new, or to just create a project that you've been wanting to, and taking advantage of this opportunity to create that. So for example, if you are looking at wanting to win, you can do what Reshmi said, look at ideas or look at challenges which not a lot of people are going to approach. Likewise with the other things, if you want to learn a new tech, you can look at ideas which would utilize that tech. And after you've reflected on your ideas, if you have like sorted them out, you can go ahead and refine a few of them. Start listing out what features you'd want, how in depth these features would be, how complex they would be, and then start thinking about how much time it would actually take to implement those features. Hackathon projects do not have to be really complex. They are just a minimum viable product, which is just to show the judges what idea you are thinking of. And when you've had your idea done, you can go on to the next stage of creating your project, which is prototyping. So a lot of people don't actually prototype during hackathons because they feel like it's just 24 hours and they need to rush through it. But what we've realized through our experiences that prototyping actually helps you save time, because then mid-development, you are not worried about what you are supposed to do. So there's two types of prototyping you can do. You can either create a wireframe or a mockup. A wireframe is a combination of structure, functions, and a resolution content of your app. And this is just a bare bones diagram to understand the layout of your design and where to start. So as you can see here, it's not fancy. It's just a black and white straight lines diagram. The next thing you can do is create a mockup, which is the combination of style, colors, and the high resolution content. And it's basically a non-functional version to understand the final product. What we usually do is for shorter hackathons, we create a wireframe, and for longer ones or ones which are more front-end extensive, we create mockups. What creating prototypes does is it makes sure that the entire team is on the same page when creating the app, so there's no confusion on what is supposed to be created or what the features actually are. It also like it's also like a check mark of all the features that you want to do. You can like come back to your prototype at like time and time throughout your development and keep a check of what is done and what is yet to be done. And it also creating a mock-up also helps you not make front-end decisions during development. So during development, your time can be, or during coding, your time can be focused solely on creating the product that rather than discussing and spending hours on like what the product should look like. And the tool that we use a lot for prototyping is Figma. And since we do have quite a few time on our hands, let me give you a quick tutorial on how to create a Figma product really fast.
While Saloni is pulling it up, I guess I can answer questions. So to Jerome's question, how much does team size matter? I feel like too many, like I think HackUTD has a limit, but I know some hackathons that don't have limits, and like people try to like bunch in as many teammates as they can get, especially if like this is one of your first hackathons. And I definitely don't recommend that, as the more people you get, especially people that you're not super familiar with, the more messy it can get. But also, the more people that you do get, the more productive you might be able to do, right? The more bigger your project may be able to do it. But of course, the trade off is that there is a bit more communication and like coordination that you'll have to get done. So there's trade offs to having like a small team and like a big team as well.
Yep. So what I'm gonna make today is try to create this a low resolution version of the Instagram mobile prototype. I'm using the Figma web version, but you can also download the app where there's more options like downloading plugins which you can use to add more detail to your prototypes. And over here what you can see is just like a copy of our previous prototypes. So in a prototype, everything that you see is actually a frame. So whenever you start by creating a frame, and on the right, you'll see you get a lot of options. And this is a really good thing about Figma. Instead of like figuring out the dimensions on your own, you can just look at the dimensions they have and design your app as per that. So um, we are going to prototype for a phone. And it's always a good idea to like name your layers properly. Otherwise you'll get really confused really fast. So let's go back to the screenshot. So one thing that we see here is that there is a navigation bar at the bottom. So instead of creating a navigation bar every time for each screen, we can do what is called a component, which means you create it once and you just create copies of it. And when you make any changes in the original one, it will be reflected in the copies as well. So let's create a frame at the very bottom. Go down, give it a color. And since we don't have these icons right now, we are just going to put in some squares. But usually if you have the app, you can install plugins, which will let you use icons as well. And then you just duplicate each of them, and you can see here, you can actually see the spacing. And this is also really helpful because spacing is a really important part of creating good UI. So we have the basic nav bar. We just right click on it and select on create component. So if we were supposed to, so if we want to like create another screen, we can just go to assets, components, and just drag drop that into our screen, and it will stay there. And similarly, you can do, there's a lot of other options in Figma that you can use. There's a lot of UI you can do. You can create like, you can give specific dimensions for where your frames are being put. You can create multiple layers, multiple stroking selection. There's a lot of effects that you can do. And at the end, you can also do what is called like a prototype flow, which means when you click prototype, you can click on an element and then drag it to something else, which means that when you tap on one element, it will go to some other element that you put in. So this actually really helps to tell you what the control flow of your project is, and if there are any dependencies in there. And as you can see, because this was a component, what changes I made over here got reflected in the other component as well. And this is just like the very basic features that we use in Figma. So just basic adding of frames, adding colors, and creating the control flow. And with that, we can go back to the presentation.
All right, now time for the most important part, coding. So first of all, you've got to know your tech stack. In classes, we learn lots of Java and C++, but that's probably not enough to make a hackathon project because you kind of need a front end. For example, we usually use the MERN stack for our projects, MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. But I mean, there's plenty of different ones, and you can do research before what you decide what you want to use. If you want to use a framework, definitely figure out what works for what your project is. So like maybe if you're making a mobile app, you're using Flutter, making a game, maybe you're going to use software like Unity. But another thing is don't be afraid to use existing libraries because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you can focus on your main idea and your main project. We often use design libraries to make our apps look really pretty. But whatever tech stack you use, you'll probably be using GitHub for sharing and collaborating with your teammates. So you probably want to get familiar with it before a hackathon, but most of them usually will have a GitHub workshop at the beginning. And HackUTD schedule says that SWE will be holding one. So if you're not comfortable with it yet, don't worry. After that, now you've got to split up your tasks. It doesn't necessarily have to be like front end, back end, and it doesn't have to be super complete or strict, but you do want everyone to have something to do, and you want to know what your teammates are working on so that you don't accidentally step on anyone's toes or do the same thing twice. One of the big reasons I say not to make everything too strict or complete is that a lot of times throughout the hackathon, your app idea might actually change as you start coding and maybe realizing some things actually aren't going to work out, or you actually come up with a better idea. So while it is really good to plan everything out, do try to stay flexible as things might change. After that, if or maybe when you get stuck on something, don't be afraid to ask for help because everyone's at the hackathon to learn. Like Rashmi said earlier, if you're working with a sponsor's API, they'll probably have a mentor who can help you figure stuff out. But for more general questions with these virtual hackathons, there's usually a channel to ask your questions. But don't forget about your teammates because you're all working together. I'm sure we've all had the experience of struggling to debug code, but when someone else takes a look, they find the problem instantly, or while you're trying to explain what's wrong, you figure it out yourself. So I definitely take advantage of this a lot. I can't count the number of times I've broken something and have to be like, Rashmi Saloni, please look at my code, tell me if you see something really stupid. Uh, but sometimes we find the problem right away, and other times we're able to work through it together. And that's great. Now to zoom back out a bit, you have to remember the big picture and keep track of time. So you might want to like create a rough schedule for when you'll stop prototyping, when you'll stop coding, and when you'll move to preparing to your presentation. If you're getting close to the deadline, try to think about what's most important in your app and prioritize what's left. So ask yourself if you really need all the different things that you've planned. If you're running super behind, at least try to get your front end working so that you'll have something to present to the judges and you can kind of let them know what your vision was for the app, even if it doesn't completely work yet. To be honest, we've seen some apps win prizes that were just front ends just because they were really, really good at pitching and selling their idea, which brings us to pitching your project. So when presenting your project to the judges, you really want them to understand why you chose that project. This is the most important part of it because this is the main and probably the only part the judges will see and score you out of. So judges will usually score you based on categories like originality, the hackathon's theme, and technicality. So the rubric usually varies, but those are usually the main things. So first tell them, what is the problem that you are actually solving? Does your app address a common problem or make something easier to do? Let the judges know why you made it. I don't mean like get all cringy, dramatic infomercial, like, oh, if I don't have this app, I'm going to die. But like really sell your idea, you know? Uh, Next, you want to really explicitly show and explain how your project solves that problem. If there's other apps that do something similar, try to mention like how yours is different and better. So this is where you get to brag about all the cool features that you worked so hard on and all the thought that you put in behind them. So don't be shy and really show them all the things you did. Uh, Now, if the hackathon has a specific theme or your project is more geared towards a specific challenge, then make sure you point that out too. Think about what the hackathon or challenge is looking for. Does the challenge mention any specifics that they want? And you might want to cater your pitch to their description to really show how your project matches what they want. Uh, if you did speak to like your mentors and talk about like what your project is, if they really thought like, hey, that's a really cool idea, we haven't seen that before, make sure you point that out. Uh, but yeah, pitching is really a fun part of hackathons, but when virtual, this is usually done through videos. So for making videos, first off, software. You definitely don't need like Premiere or Final Cut or anything to make a good video. You can use iMovie or Windows Movie Maker or any free software that you find, as long as you like just pay attention and put in some effort. Now, as you can probably tell, we're pretty big fans of planning, and the presentation is no exception. So before you start recording, figure out what the hackathon wants. Some hackathons just want a really quick demo, and others want like a full detailed pitch with like reasons behind your tech stack and future plans for development. So after you figure that out, you can plan what features you're going to demo and figure out how you're going to navigate through your app to actually show off those features. What I usually do is I make a list of all the things that we finished, and then I write a script to go along with that. Then I practice going through the app to make sure I can like make it really clean, like no like misclicks or anything. And then after I record that, I just record myself reading over the script. After that, you've got to be aware of time. So unlike real life presentations, you can't really wait until the judges come over and just like wing your presentation because videos take a while. This means that you can't really be coding until the last second like you might at normal hackathons. So it's not like 24 hours of coding necessarily, maybe it's 22. So you've got to stop earlier because you've got to plan your video, record it, record your audio, edit your video, render it, and upload it too. And if you've got slow internet, you need to be super aware of that. We usually stop coding a few hours before the deadline, but like Reshmi said, there's definitely been a few times that we're getting really close and I'm just staring at the render and upload screens like, oh, please make it. But this isn't a video editing tutorial or anything. So just a few tips when you're going through, make sure that you've got descriptions for what's happening on the screen, like maybe narrating, like now I'm going to show you this next part or something. And try for a good audio. If your mic maybe sounds like you're crinkling a candy wrapper in a windstorm, maybe try recording your phone or something because having bad audio can really detract from what you're trying to say. And here's one of our demos as an example. It's got my voice in it. I'm very sorry. I don't think you've shared this sound. I try to add some fun to our videos, yes. Oh no. Okay, doesn't look like it's working. We can just send the link into it after if you guys want to see an example. It's all great. I'm sorry, if you want to see our Pokemon meme video, we'll share it after. Or, okay. Yeah, I think we got to come back to it. Oh boy, sorry about that. But anyway, we'll come back to that after. After the hackathon's over, you should be super proud of yourself because you're gonna have to overcome a lot of hurdles and to be able to present something. Developing a project from like beginning to end in such a short amount of time is super stressful. So being able to do that is awesome. And I think the best part of the hackathon is learning new things and having fun with your teammates. So after all that hard work, you should reward yourself with a well-deserved break and probably a long nap. Yes, Beanie Gang. And that's it.
I'm going to try sharing the video again.
Yeah, let's do that instead.
We'll just share the link later.
But yeah, thanks so much for listening. You can check in at the link. You can send again into chat. And yeah, smash that like button, ring the bell, hit that subscribe button. Let me pull up the video.
Yep, no problem. And if any of y'all have any questions, feel free to like unmute yourself or you can ask it in the chat. Thank y'all for coming.
You recognized all that royalty-free music, Josh?
Okay, so one question, how would you go about this if you have minimal front-end development experience? Wait, why is that music playing now?
Oh.
Okay. Nice song. So I know some people definitely go in just knowing like Java and C++, so like minimal languages that can be used for the front end. But I feel like for a hackathon project, you definitely need to be able to show legit something front end. So I definitely recommend like once you kind of think of your idea and you think of your tech stack, try to figure out like what front end languages you can use and try to learn something new. Is there anything May or Saloni want to add to that?
There's usually lots of workshops throughout hackathons, and I'm sure one of them will help you with front-end development.
Okay.
Also, one other thing is like judges don't expect you to have a very fancy or UI. They know that it's just 24 hours. So like even if you have something basic that works, we we have won awards on like very basic looking UIs, which was like just nothing fancy, just like a blank screen with like borders around like every components we made, and even like the components were like blank background images, like nothing fancy at all.
Okay, the next question, where do y'all get inspirations for hackathon project ideas? I definitely feel like brainstorming is one of the hardest parts. I feel like that's kind of where we spent a lot of amount of time. But we definitely like look at the challenges for the most part and kind of like generate ideas based off of that, as well as like issues that we've had ourselves. I think some of the best projects are definitely solving an issue that people face. And Saloni, you can add anything to that.
I guess usually when there's a theme, we try to think of stuff based off of that as a starting point. Yeah, definitely just based off of what things we see and things we struggle with. Anything that we can make a cringy infomercial out of, basically.
Yeah, for me, like ideas come from most of my ideas come from like tech stacks that I want to learn about. For me, I've learned that I learn the most about like doing projects, and like a hackathon is a good opportunity to do so because you get to learn something and you get a project out of that. So I usually like look at the tech I want to learn. I see what it's usually made, like what people usually make using that tech, and then try to think of an idea around that.
Okay, the next question by Camden. I don't know who that is. What challenge should we do? Although I did see this Camden won first place. Nice, nice. HackUTD actually, they said that they're going to have their challenges out beforehand. And I know on DevPost, there are prizes and like the categories, but there's not a lot of information about the challenges yet. But I know they will come out. But definitely one tip that I mentioned before is that if you kind of do a challenge that may not seem as popular, you might have less competition, as well as we kind of generate ideas for different challenges. Then we kind of pick the challenge, we pick our best idea and then just go for that challenge. There should be a K-pop
Yeah,
challenge.
one thing that we've recently started doing when we are confused about like which challenge to do or which idea to do, we sometimes look at the prices and see which price worth the most and then go from there. So that's also an approach you can use.
Is there a K-pop challenge? There should be.
You should ask the president about that. Eyes emoji.
You know, if we could have like a small dance challenge, who danced best to the K-pop song, and the award is, you know, poster, a K-pop poster. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I think I've answered all of the questions in the chat. So if there's anything I missed, just send it again. But if not, thank you all for coming. Definitely hope to see y'all submit things to Hack UT this weekend. Bye, Jerome.
Yeah, if you haven't done so yet, check in.
Oh, yes, yes. About the check-in link, at the end of the semester, the people who attend some of the most ACM events will be getting some ACM swag. So definitely make sure to check in if you do come to events.
Thank you all for coming.
Bye.
a great workshop, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Coming from a first place winner. Oh, nice.